All right, everybody, welcome back for another deep dive. You ready to get into it today?
Absolutely. Let's dive in.
Okay, so today we're going to be looking at monkey vision and more specifically how snakes and snake scales play into all this.
Yeah, it's pretty fascinating stuff.
Yeah, we've got this research here from scientific reports that we're going to be looking at. And honestly, it's probably going to change how you think about snakes forever.
Yeah. It might even change the way you see the world.
No kidding. So essentially what they found is that monkeys use snake scales as their primary visual cue for identifying snakes.
That's right. It's like a built-in warning system that just screams danger.
And what's even crazier is that even baby monkeys, like ones that have never even seen a snake before,
Yeah.
they still have that instinctive reaction.
It really is incredible. It's not learned behavior. It's something that's just deeply ingrained in their evolutionary history.
So it's like some kind of ancestral memory. That's wild.
It is.
Okay, but so are you saying because monkeys freak out about scales, does that mean we do too? I mean, I don't necessarily get scared every time I see like a fish.
Well, that's a great question. And while we can't exactly ask a monkey what it's seeing, researchers have found that humans, even babies, often exhibit an instinctive fear response to images of snakes.
So maybe there is something to this scale thing. But okay, so how did these researchers actually figure this out? I mean, did they like give the monkeys tiny eye exams or something?
Not exactly. But they did come up with some pretty ingenious methods. They designed these experiments where they basically gave monkeys these visual puzzles. They showed them a bunch of images, and then they trained the monkeys to pick out the odd one out to get a reward.
Interesting. So they did these tests where they showed the monkeys pictures of snakes and salamanders, and some of them had like fake scales, and they timed how quickly the monkeys reacted.
Yeah, exactly.
And get this. The monkeys were super fast at spotting a snake amongst the salamanders, which makes sense, right?
Yeah.
You want to be able to spot danger as quickly as possible.
Right.
But here's the really wild part. They were even faster at spotting a salamander that had fake scales than an actual snake.
It's almost like their brains have this shortcut that says scales equals snake, snake equals danger, react immediately. And this shortcut is so ingrained that it overrides other visual information.
So you're telling me these monkeys were more scared of salamanders with fake scales than real snakes? That's kind of messed up. How is that even possible?
Well, that's the power of evolution. Over millions of years, primates have evolved to be hyper-aware of snakes because they've been a constant threat. Being able to quickly identify a snake, even if it's partially hidden or camouflaged, could mean the difference between life and death. So their visual systems have become incredibly fine-tuned to detect those telltale scales.
Wow, that's just crazy. So this tiny detail, the scales, it completely changes how monkeys perceive and react to the world around them.
That's right.
It's like a secret code that screams danger.
But what does this all mean for us? Do we have similar visual shortcuts?
Well, that's the million-dollar question, isn't it?
Yeah.
And that's where things get really interesting. So we know that monkeys are like scale-detecting ninjas after millions of years of evolution telling them to watch out. But what about other animals? I mean, do they have similar visual superpowers for spotting danger? Or like important things in their world, you know, like a bat using echolocation but with eyeballs?
It's really amazing to think about. While we can't exactly ask a dolphin what it sees, researchers are using some very clever techniques to try and study animal vision. Things like eye tracking technology and brain imaging.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So they're piecing together clues from how the animals behave and what's happening in their brains to try and understand how they actually see the world.
So like animal mind readers.
In a way, yes. And what they're finding is that different animals have these specialized visual systems that are just perfectly adapted to their needs.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So think about it. A hawk soaring high above needs incredible long-range vision to be able to spot tiny prey,
Right.
while an owl hunting in the dark needs super sensitive night vision.
Yeah, so it's like each animal has its own visual specialty fine-tuned over millions of years.
Right.
So just like monkeys have their scale radar, maybe a zebra has a strike detector to see lions hiding in the grass.
Exactly.
Or a chameleon has a bug movement tracker to help them find their next meal.
Exactly. It's all about evolution shaping their vision to prioritize what's most important for their survival. But here's where things get even more mind-boggling. What if we humans have similar subconscious triggers?
Wait, are you saying there are things that we see that make us react a certain way without even realizing it?
Yeah.
Like some hidden visual code that influences our choices?
Think about it. We are bombarded with visual information every single day. Colors, shapes, patterns. Our brains have to filter through all that noise and decide what's actually important.
Right.
So it's not crazy to think that evolution may have equipped us with certain shortcuts to make those really fast judgments.
Okay, now you're kind of freaking me out a little.
Really?
So you're saying our brains aren't just generically good at seeing. they've evolved specific mechanisms to detect things that were really vital to our survival.
That's the idea.
That's incredible, but also kind of creepy.
Yeah.
What kind of hidden triggers are we talking about here?
Well, that's what researchers are trying to figure out. It could be anything from subtle facial expressions that signal trustworthiness
Okay.
to patterns in nature that evoke a sense of calm.
So the reason I always choose the blue shirt instead of the red shirt could be because of some deep-seated evolutionary preference for the color blue.
It's definitely possible. We know that colors can have a really powerful impact on our emotions and our behaviors.
Yeah.
For example, red is often associated with danger or excitement,
Yeah.
while blue is linked to calmness and trust.
Ah. So maybe those marketing gurus are tapping into some ancient visual code without even knowing it.
It's definitely a fascinating area of study.
Yeah.
Understanding these subconscious visual triggers could completely revolutionize everything from advertising to architecture to art.
Wow. Okay, so if our brains are so good at detecting these visual cues, even the ones we're not consciously aware of, why are we so easily fooled by optical illusions? You know, those trippy images that just make our brains go haywire.
That's a great question. It highlights the fact that our brains, while incredibly sophisticated, aren't perfect.
Right.
Optical illusions actually work by exploiting the shortcuts and assumptions that our brains make when they're processing visual information.
Okay.
They basically hijack our visual system, creating this disconnect between what we see and what we perceive.
So it's like those impossible staircases that seem to go up and down forever.
Mm-hmm.
Or those images where you can see two different things depending on how you look at it.
Exactly.
Our brains just can't handle that kind of visual chaos.
Right. Our brains are constantly trying to make sense of the world to find those patterns and order.
Yeah.
And when they're presented with this conflicting information, they sometimes get stuck in a loop, unable to reconcile the discrepancies.
That's pretty wild.
Yeah.
So even though our brains are these amazing pattern-recognizing machines, they can still be tricked by, a clever arrangement of lines and shapes.
It just goes to show that there's still so much we don't understand about how our brains work. And that's what makes studying them so exciting.
So we've explored monkey vision animal superpowers, even mind-bending illusions. But let's get back to the research for a second. Remember how those researchers said that this whole-scale discovery could change how we understand vision and how brains evolved across all animals?
Yes, that's the really big picture stuff. It's like this one tiny detail about monkey vision cracked open a whole new way of looking at the evolution of sight itself. And not just for primates, for all sorts of creatures.
So it's not just about monkeys and snakes anymore. It's about understanding how vision works at its most fundamental level, and how it shaped the evolution of brains across the entire animal kingdom.
Precisely. This research could lead to some incredible breakthroughs in understanding how different animals perceive the world around them.
Right.
It could also have implications for developing new technologies inspired by animal vision,
Okay.
like advanced robotics or even better visual prosthetics.
That's incredible. It's like we're learning from nature's greatest inventors.
Mm-hmm.
But I have to ask, do you think there are other things besides snakes that might trigger this kind of deep-seated reaction in humans? Like, are there any universal visual cues that just send our brains into overdrive?
That's a fascinating question. And it's one that researchers are actively looking into.
Yeah.
We already know that certain facial expressions like a wide-eyed stare or a bared teeth grin can trigger those instinctive fear responses in humans.
Yeah, like when you see someone with that super intense look in their eyes and you just know to back away slowly.
Exactly. Those are visual cues that signal a potential threat. And they've likely been hardwired into our brains over millions of years of evolution.
So it's like our brains are constantly scanning for danger, even when we're not consciously thinking about it.
It's a survival mechanism that has served us well throughout our evolutionary history.
Right.
But it also highlights the fact that our perception of the world isn't always objective. It's influenced by a complex interplay of instinct, emotion, and learned associations.
So we're not just seeing with our eyes. We're seeing with our brains, with all their quirks and biases.
Exactly. And understanding those quirks and biases is crucial for understanding how we make decisions, how we interact with each other, and how we navigate the complexities of the world around us.
This whole deep dive has been a real eye-opener. And I don't just mean literally.
Uh-huh.
It's made me realize that there's just so much more to seeing than meets the eye.
Absolutely. And the more we learn about how vision works, the more we appreciate the incredible power and complexity of the human brain.
Well, I'm definitely going to be looking at the world a little differently from now on. Paying more attention to those subtle cues and hidden triggers that might be influencing my thoughts and actions.
That's the spirit. Always be curious, always be questioning, and never stop exploring the mysteries of the brain.
Okay, so we've talked about a lot here. We went from monkeys going crazy over snake scales to the idea that maybe we have our own hidden visual triggers that change how we see things.
It's been quite a journey through vision and evolution, huh?
It really has. But before we go, I want to leave you with something to think about. If our brains are so good at picking up these little cues, even without us realizing it, what other hidden triggers could be out there? What else is affecting how we see and act without us knowing?
That's a great question to think about. It opens up a whole world of possibilities. We're surrounded by visual stuff, architecture, art, nature. What if there are patterns in those things that affect us deeper than we realize?
Are you saying that, like, the reason I feel so calm in a certain park might be because of some hidden visual code and how the trees are arranged?
That might sound crazy, but it's not impossible. Our brains are always looking for patterns and meaning even when we don't know it. And those patterns can really affect how we feel and act.
So there's like a secret language of visual cues that we're just starting to understand.
Exactly. And the more we learn about it, the more we can appreciate how powerful the brain is and all the little ways it changes how we experience the world.
This deep dive has really opened my eyes, and I don't just mean literally. It's made me realize there's so much more to seeing than meets the eye. Our brains are these incredible, complex things that are always working to understand everything around us.
It's been great exploring these ideas with you, and I hope it's inspired you to look at the world in a new way. Pay attention to those little things that might be affecting you without you even knowing.
So next time you're out, take a second to really look at what's around you. You might be surprised what your brain picks up on. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive, and until next time, keep those brains buzzing.